Hey, it's Chris with the Felt Recoil podcast. I want to tell you about the charity of choice for this week's episode, Charlotte Family Housing. This is an organization just about 100 miles from where we sit, but we have good friends who deal with this organization and give it the stamp of approval, so we're going to tell you a little bit about it. The Charlotte Family Housing is a shelter-to-housing program for homeless families. They primarily serve single mothers with children, but they're also one of the limited options for single fathers. The staff of highly trained social workers and housing coordinators partner with the families to define the path that will ultimately lead them to obtaining and maintaining housing. Charlotte Family Housing's unique empowerment-driven model is designed to produce healthy, deep, measurable, and lasting change with the family participants and volunteers that work with Charlotte Family Housing. If you are in need or if you know someone that is, visit charlottefamilyhousing.org for more information. charlottefamilyhousing.org is the charity of choice for this week's Felt Recoil podcast.
This is Felt Recoil.
Welcome to the Felt Recoil podcast. This is number 21, and across from me is, Brian, I think you're number 3 for old school acquaintances of mine that have been on the show.
It's been a while.
So congratulations. We did 6th and 7th grade together.
That's
in
right.
Charlotte, North Carolina, in a little school called Bible Baptist.
Oh, don't put me out there like that.
Yes. Oh, was I not supposed to?
No, that's fine.
Oh, okay, sorry. Maybe that wasn't what it's called. I don't know. So Brian is with us. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Yeah,
by the
thanks
way.
for having me.
We're going to start one question 5 times here in just a quick second, but I want to give everybody that needs it a quick intro. You're a writer for the Arms Guide. You can also find Brian's work on Ammo Land as well as SoftRep, which is a pretty cool little it's almost like this veterans news agency where you can hear the opinion of some pretty hardcore operators if you're into that
Which
kind of
I
thing.
am not one of.
Yeah, that's all right. But that great transition. You are not an operator. You have a very cool, unique line of work you're in outside of the gun industry. You're a preacher.
Yeah.
Which is awesome. Your church is
City Light Church in Charlotte, North Carolina.
It's fantastic. So a lot of cool stuff to talk about, but we'll start with one question 5 times. You ready for that?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. What's the one gun everyone should own?
Oh, man, this is a hard one for me. I guess it depends. If it's one gun that I've got to pick, for me, I'm going to say a Glock 19.
Okay.
But I listened to a little bit of your podcast, and a lot of people said Glock 19.
Right.
Yeah. So...
It's a popular gun.
In our current situation, you're going to, I think, the right to keep and bear arms, and I think if you can carry that sucker, if you're only going to have one gun, great. That's a good idea. The average person's probably not going to carry a Glock 19, in my opinion. Yeah. If you're going to do that, I'd say maybe a Smith & Wesson Shield, something single stack, something easy to go with. Though that's not a real great, neither are great home defense options if you're just focused on just home defense.
Yeah. So, but overall, Glock 19.
I'd say Glock 19.
All
yeah,
right.
I'd say a Glock 19.
I will make one quick argument, one quick point to that. I think actually the Glock 19 is a little bit easier to carry than some people give it credit for, which I think makes it so popular.
Yeah, I'm a fat guy and I'm carrying one right now. So.
See, me too. Me too. All right. What's the one film you think everyone should see?
Man, I'm not doing it for everybody else. And let me again say, I watch movies not based on the actors and their opinions in other realms.
Okay.
I watch them for entertainment value.
Yeah,
so let me
right.
make that caveat. But regardless of Matt Damon and all that kind of stuff.
You have listened to this podcast.
Yeah. So
okay.
I say Good Will Hunting because...
excellent film.
Good Will Hunting because I think authenticity... Yeah. It kind of gives a couple engagements where I think the way the human kind of creature does realness actually happens. And the way that happens, in my view, is people get real after they think there's no other option. They come kicking and screaming. Yeah. Like it doesn't just happen naturally. Like they have to feel kind of like this is the only way that I can. Because I think it's good for us, but I don't think it happens so easily. So.
Fantastic explanation.
Like that, yeah.
What's the one album you think everyone should own?
Oh, man. I'm not a music guy. I know that talking to you, guitar player, I ought to be, but, I am not the guy that could tell you names and lyrics and all that kind of stuff. I do like music. I think I appreciate it. I'm going to go with Throwing Copper. Because back in the day when there was this whole world that I was living in where secular and sacred music, they were evil and you should never, so I had to be rebellious to have that cassette tape.
Yeah.
But it was a time in my life when I was mowing grass, tons and tons and tons of grass. And I had my buddy's copy of that live album. And man, to this day, it just is a motivating thing. I can get work done listening to that because it takes me back. It takes me back to junior high and high school, and I can get a lot of work done listening to some lightning crashes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. My goodness, I can't remember the name of the band.
Live.
Gotcha. Yeah. Okay. You said that. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, what's funny is when you said I had that live album, I thought it was a band.
Yeah, live album like
live
Fish
album.
Or,
Yeah. All right. And I had that album. You're right. That is a great album. What's the one book everyone should read? With the caveat being you can't say the Bible. We say that every time because I'm not blowing smoke.
So I was gonna say, like, I heard that you guys asked this question, and I was gonna be like, man, he's probably gonna out me as a pastor, and if I don't say, let me break your rule for just a second, and not just say the Bible,
right?
But let me make a quick argument and say specifically the Book of John, and it's because I think whether you're a Christian or not, from a philosophical, everything that's going on in the world right now, I think that's a really important idea. A lot of people think they know what Jesus is about and his teachings, but not very many people have actually read his teachings. And that particular book presents him and his teachings in a very love-oriented, very real-world, very personal way. And specifically with everything going on in the Islamic community in our world today, I think the idea of God defining love and engaging with people personally is really important.
Yeah.
I think that's a revolutionary thought in the way that we deal with one another. So, but books I could talk forever about.
Yeah.
So like obligatory, because of my faith, not because I'm a pastor, I'm going to say the Book of John or any gospel, but specifically I think the Book of John. If you want to go beyond that, I can give
me one beyond that. Here's the thing. So our preface to people, we always say don't say the Bible because we don't really count it as a book. Right?
Yeah.
We see it as a little bit more in the book.
Yeah.
So we
kind of is a book, but yeah.
And well, but we think of it as a book, but it really is so much more.
Right,
and not to be melodramatic about it, but it's
Right.
also everybody's typical answer. Well, you should read the Bible. But all right, so give me one.
That's
beyond
the obligatory answer.
But you were very specific, which I like. If everybody was going to say, "Well, here's a book in the Bible," then I'm cool with them answering the question.
It's cool. And I could give you so many. Like the weird part of your question is that everybody should, if you wanted to ask me my favorites, cool. But
I guess, yeah.
I think I'm going to double down since I've been outed as a pastor and do another Christian thing.
Okay.
And I'm going to do Orthodoxy by Chesterton.
Okay.
But it's not for a real Christian reason. I think people need to. It's a good treatise on how to engage somebody from a logical kind of perspective, specifically that doesn't agree with you. So I think you could pick up Orthodoxy and figure out how to argue with somebody well and still kind of be graceful,
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, it's kind of the most important part, right?
But man, there's
to be
so
graceful
many
in your
books.
delivery of the message.
So many books, like recent stuff. There's a book called Contagious. I think it's really interesting how we're influenced and how
The marketing book?
Yeah, I think
it's on my nightstand right now.
Yeah. The Power of Habit, I think, was kind of cool. I read recently.
That's a great
I
book,
think
isn't
I think I heard you mention that though on the way down the road here. So I think that's
Fantastic book.
man. We could so many cool books. Anything by Louis L'Amour. Everybody just needs some old Western stuff in their life.
Yeah, love that guy. If you could talk to your 18-year-old self, what's the one piece of advice you give him?
Okay, so something like, something like, this is a hard one for me. Something like learn to develop reaction time sooner. Learn to develop reaction time sooner. And by that, I mean that early on in my adult life, I started to see through some things in some organizations that I think I was really slow to exit. I was really slow. I was like, well, let's invest some more into this and fixing this. And I think that was a mistake. There were points in time in my life when I should have exited organizations and reacted much faster.
I see.
On the flip side, early in my life, with personal relationships, I think the negative is true. The opposite is true. Sometimes I should have reacted slower. And in the personal world, I was too fast to write somebody off, too fast to not give them the time that they needed to get where they were going. And so I would actually, from an organizational standpoint, get out faster and react faster. And in a personal relationship standpoint, kind of slow my roll a little bit.
Yeah, be a little more patient with people type thing.
Yeah, I think...
I don't know many 18-year-olds that are very patient with other people,
exactly,
though. So.
Exactly. So I think my calibrating, maybe is a good way to say it, calibrating my reaction time in relationships was way off. And I don't know that I could I could fix that. But I don't have a lot of, I'm a firm believer in kind of, things, no reason to have regrets and feel like, hey, things are the way they are,
yeah,
and
absolutely.
you got to move forward. So this is a hard question for me because I kind of think, for the most part, I would do the things that I did because otherwise I wouldn't be in the situation that I'm in. I'm happy with life.
Right.
But
You have
anyway,
kids. I have kids.
Yeah.
And I do that a lot with my kids where I go, maybe I would have changed this. Maybe I wouldn't have done this or I wouldn't have moved here. But then I think, yeah, but if you change one thing
right,
from
I
then.
don't want to screw that up.
What's to say you don't have the kids you have now?
And that's the biggest thing I would say to myself, because I don't know how this whole time warp thing works.
Right.
I don't you could mess up where you're currently at. And I would say, do not screw things up with Laura.
Yeah.
I married my high school sweetheart or I don't like the word sweetheart, but my first real girlfriend, other dating things. And a lot of times that doesn't work out really well, but she is one of the really good things that's happened in my life. To be married to your literal best friend is really helpful.
Yeah.
It's really helpful.
Yeah.
We've gone through, there are a lot of things, a lot of times when I almost really screwed it up. So I'd say, do not screw this one thing up. A lot of things can go and come, but I don't want to lose that particular element of my life.
Let's do a quick recap. The gun is the Glock 19. The film is Good Will Hunting. The album was Lives Throwing Copper. The book is specifically the Book of John or Orthodoxy by Chesterton. And then your advice for your 18-year-old self, speed up reaction times, be more patient with people.
Yeah, fair enough.
Gotcha. All right, let's talk about this. You're the first I've ever gotten to talk to really face-to-face with someone who your kind of side job, if you will, as you called it earlier, a habit that makes a little bit of money, maybe, or not a hobby.
I'm
excuse
getting
me.
independently wealthy in the firearms industry. That's what's happening.
So a hobby that generates some income for you. You write for Arms Guide. Walk me through the process of A, how did you get into that?
Right.
And then B, what's your day-to-day function like in that now?
So I hesitate to say some of this because I think the word writer kind of sounds pretentious, especially when you're talking about writing a book. Like most people that you talk to these days, oh, I'm writing a book, especially pastors. We all get that you're writing a book, fine. But there's a project that I've been working on for some time, something that I'm writing. May never see the light of day, but I think enough of it that I want to do it well. And so I looked for some way to develop writing as a skill. And a lot of people were advising writing coaches and those kind of things. And I just wasn't in a stage in life where I needed to spend money doing that.
Like get a coach to teach you to write better.
Yeah, or take some extra classes or whatever. And I just needed to find a way to contribute to the bottom line, not take away from it. We were working on starting a church, and that's very expensive. There are all kinds of things. If you've, and maybe don't think about the church piece of that. If you've tried to start anything, it's expensive. So I didn't need to focus financial stuff someplace else. So I said, hey, what do I have in my hand? What hobbies do I have that I could write about that somebody might want this content? And so I said, well, I'm a shooter. I enjoy that. what if I could maybe pay for my hobby a little bit so I could continue to shoot and maybe get some coaching through an editor? And that's where it began. I started to look for an opportunity to write about guns and the shooting outdoor kind of deal, and that opened up for me. It was kind of a weird situation in that I was watching YouTube videos, and there was this girl on YouTube that I'd honestly just watched a few videos of, and she became the editor of a news site that Force 12 Network was starting, because she had honestly a ton of traffic for them to start with.
Sure.
Right. And that's all that it was. And no disrespect to her. But I was like, if she can write about guns, I can write about guns.
Yeah.
Because, you know, she didn't have a whole lot of experience. And I didn't either, but I had probably more. So I was like, maybe this is my good entry point. I sent out an email to a few people and instead of just writing an email, I wrote a piece and just sent it to them and said, hey, would you be interested in publishing this? And are you looking for a regular contributor? And a couple of them got back to me and said, we might be interested. And that one was like, heck yeah. And so I thought, well, this is the widest open door of the 2 or 3 options that I had at the time.
So you just push your way in?
Just kind of push my way in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Keep going at it. So now, are you in a position now where when it comes time, so you see guys like Such, Iraq Veteran 8888, all these other guys that seem to get their hands on anything and everything you could imagine.
Yeah.
Are you in a position now, writing for the Arms Guide, where you request things? Are people pursuing you and saying, would you please review this? How does it work on your end?
Works a little bit both ways. I didn't even realize that was a thing when I first started writing. Like I didn't realize that you could ask. Like I was just buying stuff, and that got expensive. I'm like, this is not gonna work long term. So I did start to ask, hey, could you send me something for me to review? Because content is flowing, and there's only so much that I needed to actually buy personally. But I do reach out to companies for things that I'm really interested in. And then companies sometimes do reach out to me as well. That's been happening more as our site has grown. And as I didn't do the YouTube thing, I started a YouTube channel, but I thought, man, that space is flooded. And honestly, I think, like I'm doing a thing right now because I'm actually investing some time in it. I have no idea how to do video. And a big thing is I don't have another person to come out with me and do video. But I'm doing a thing right now where I'm going to give away a BCG when I hit my 300th subscriber, which is 300 is nothing. But I think we were at 299 when I got in the truck this morning.
Nice.
So we're going to do that. And that's not anything when it comes to YouTube stats. But I think it is something that I need to develop in the current space of writing, and like YouTube is gunland when it comes to social stuff. So I'm starting to develop that a little bit and invest a little bit more time into it. And honestly, tied to that, I've had more people reaching out, because if somebody's going to reach out to one of the websites, they're going to reach out to the editor, and that might be disseminated to any number of writers. But the people that reach out to me are typically companies that I've done something for in the past, or it might not be. It might be the marketing group that handles a company. That marketing guy might say, "Hey, I work with this other company. Would you be interested in writing something?" And honestly, if I'm not interested, I'm not going to write about it. And if it's no good, I'm not going to say it is.
Right.
Because there's just no point in that from my perspective. But
and that's such a good feeling that you make a little bit of money. I'm not,
right.
And you can generate an income. Hopefully one day livable, or maybe it already is. I don't know. You don't have to share that. But my point is, you can make a little bit of side money,
right,
for having fun, and nobody's there to tell you exactly how to do it or what your opinion has to be.
Yeah, and when they try to, you say, "This is not a company I want to work
with."
And it's not going to happen.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
if you're listening to this and you're like, "Hey, we're going to send him this, and then we're going to tell him what we want to write," don't reach out to me.
Yeah,
I don't want to talk to you.
Yep, that's good. That's good, because otherwise, I mean, we Wait, before I mention mine, what is your YouTube channel?
Yeah, this is funny. I think this is funny. It's Rev to the Limit. Okay.
All right.
So when
Sounds like a racing channel.
When I did my YouTube channel, I really thought of it as it was an afterthought. I'm going to do this writing, and and at that time there were all these YouTube, like the big names and the gun thing, all had. So I was kind of joking, kind of mocking. But now I'm like, I don't need to restart one.
Right.
So I am a Rev. I am a reverend, although please don't ever like use the word reverend. That's a title that like Jesus is revered, not me. All right. But I also like motorcycles. So there was this kind of Rev thing, you know, so I was riding my motorcycle a lot. In fact, my first video, I think, had like my tack, you know, being revved on the intro. And, you know, and I was kind of joking around with the YouTube name stuff out there. If I was going to do it now, it would be like called something fancy like Brian Norris. But that was like at the time, all the gun stuff was, you know, nobody was using their real name. I make a habit of like somebody asks, you know, I'm in Charlotte, North Carolina, because I just don't want to separate this stuff. It's just like, I know there's all the safety, but I'm a pastor. If somebody wants to find me, I'm easy to find, you know, so.
Well, it's funny, you hit on something. You talk about you getting your subscribers on YouTube and building your channel, and we have a little YouTube channel for Felt Recoil.
I'm a subscriber, man.
Thank you very much.
That Saint video was off the chain.
See, all right,
for Rizzle.
So that's the thing, though, is that, you know, I try and stay really just positive. I don't know enough to be negative. I don't know enough to be the guy that goes, well, the old head spacing issues here.
No,
again.
I'm not interested in ragging on some company. I'm not in the business of running people down. There have been a number of people that have sent something to me, and I've been like, here's the deal. I don't think you want me to write this.
Yeah. Didn't go well.
Like it's not working great. I'll send it back to him. You know, like that's no problem. I don't have to write something negative.
So how many guns has Ruger sent you? That's weird. Yeah.
Actually, funny enough, Ruger is sending me 2 guns right now.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited about reviewing them.
Are you getting an LCP2 by any chance?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's going to be their new 2245 Light and their new 1022 that's also like their backpacker configuration, their light thing. I'm interested in lightweight stuff. So I'm going to try those things.
Isn't there already there's a 2245 Light already, isn't there?
Right.
So
but
any idea what's new about it?
Yeah, there's some like coloration things. It's not it's not a big deal.
Springfield, huh?
Yeah,
here's our new TRP. It's gray.
No, it's not super big deal. That version that thing was popular, and so they did a 1022 version. So that's what I was interested in.
Gotcha.
And they're going to photograph well together, I think.
That's cool.
And Smith & Wesson's sending out their Victory, so I'm going to do a little comparison thing, too.
Yeah, I mean, that Victory's pretty slick, too.
Yeah.
I mean, truthfully, I give Ruger a hard time, but I shot a suppressed Mark III recently.
Right.
Holy moly, man. That's heaven right there. That is pretty slick.
When the way that light is set up looks like the profile would be pretty great for a suppressor.
Yeah, it's pretty nice.
We'll see.
All right, so let's dive in a little bit to the spiritual side, because I'm very curious.
Yeah, no.
I told you.
I'm not one of those kind of preachers.
No.
No Jesus talk.
So I do get curious. I had I was going to see if I had my copy. If I had some organization skills, it'd be awesome. I made the cover of Frontline magazine once. Yeah,
is that the FBF thing?
It is. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
And it was because the pastor I grew up underneath, Dr. Vaughn, who I think is one of the most extraordinary people in the world. Okay. Just you talk about so people that say, "Oh, people of faith," and would ever mock people of faith, they haven't met John Vaughn, because here's a guy whose family was riddled with problems in the beginning, with a house fire that permanently and severely handicapped his daughter, and his wife carried burns with her entire life. Yeah. They took that and created one of the premier schools in the Southeast called Hidden Treasures for kids with special needs.
Yeah.
And now they have the school and the church, and he is just the nicest guy you're ever going to meet. And I'm telling you all that because it's important for this context. So I went to church. I was in my probably early 30s at the time, so it's been a few years. And he had mentioned the part of, kind of honoring your government was kind of in the sermon. Sorry, but the verse is slipping in my mind.
That's all right.
The render under Caesar what is Caesar's kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I went up to him afterwards. I said, so here's my question for you. We're talking about a government right now who forcefully takes our money by law and then gives that money to organizations that murder unborn children.
Right.
At what point am I allowed to say, you don't get any more of my money?
Right.
I just absolutely refuse.
Right.
And then I'm not outside of both, the moral code of the Bible, although I'm outside of man's law. Mm-hmm. So my point is we're having this conversation about God's law versus man's law.
Right.
Which I think there's an obvious distinction between the two these days. And I do this thing just like I'm doing you now where I kind of close my fist, the Bill Clinton thumb on top thing when I talk. For some reason, that's a habit
great.
for
I
me.
like it. Yeah.
And I did it toward him.
Have you read My Life?
I haven't. Is that Bill Clinton's
Bill
book?
Clinton, yeah.
No, why would I do that?
Well, I mean, I think it's really instructive to get in the headspace of how people that are your enemies think. I think.
Sure.
No. No.
Is there a cigar section?
It's really interesting because if you remember, like, I'm not trying to get you off bat.
It's fine. I do it all the time.
But it's really interesting if you read those stories and you did not know, because especially if you listen to the audio version, you should listen to the audio version.
Does he read it?
He reads it.
Oh, man.
So here this guy is that thinks, like,
he thinks he did good in the world.
He thinks the version of the story that he's right. I mean,
it's true.
It's the definition of revisionist history by the person that lived it.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is how this guy actually remembers
He's told the
this.
lie so many times he now believes it.
But if you know what happened in those events, you're like, holy cow, this is the way he's painted. It's amazing to just get into the headspace of somebody like that. Anyway, read My Life. Do it. Listen to it.
Maybe
That's even
I will.
better. Yeah.
So I'm making that Bill Clinton gesture towards the pastor, and somebody snapped a photo. In fact, I think it was my mom. And I kind of had my head cocked, and I'm actually holding a baby in my hand in like the car seat, So I'm holding our oldest son in this hand. I'm talking to him with the other one. Well, they used it on the front, and the title was "Speaking Up Without Talking Down," and it was such an image that they put a disclaimer in the beginning where Pastor Vaughn said, "I've known Chris his entire life.
Right.
This was a spirited conversation. He's a good guy. Blah blah." Because we actually, before we moved to Charlotte when I was very young, we lived here in Greenville.
Okay, cool.
Okay, and that it was his church we were in. We went back. Here's my whole point. So I'd posit almost the same question to you. We are in a perilous time here. I believe firmly, and you can feel free to distinguish yourself from this, but I think we're already in a civil war.
Okay.
The difference is that we're fighting it with our fists and feet rather than with firearms. Because every time you watch the news, there's one of these far left protests in the middle of the streets. People are fighting. They're fighting each other. Stickman is a thing. He's out there beating people that are coming at him and the Trump supporters. There's a civil war being raged, not with the secession, and not with breaking apart, but we are fighting each other in the streets right now. Mm-hmm. So how do you approach that from a spiritual side, where you say, I guess what I'm asking you is, what do you see as the remedy? How do you fix that fissure politically from a spiritual standpoint?
From a spiritual standpoint, see, like if you want to talk opinions, I can go all day long. From a spiritual standpoint, it's a loaded question, right? So let me give you an opinion first, and then we'll get into the spiritual stuff. So from a opinion side of the fence, I see the picture that you're painting as a strategic attempt for us as individuals, from citizens, to be divided and conquered. Mm-hmm. I don't see it as us like being on sides necessarily. I think that's the way that we're intended to see it. But I think right now you're more on point when you talk about civil war type situation, though I'm not an advocate of, I'm not trying to get a war started.
I hope it doesn't sound like I'm advocating it.
But I think it's the people versus the infrastructure, the people versus the government, rather than the people versus the people, although everything's being done to picture it that way. So with that caveat being said, am I even on the page of what you're talking about? Okay, I want to make sure that I'm hearing your question right. From a spiritual standpoint, I think that divide and conquer tactic needs to be brutally slain. Mm-hmm. And I think the best way to do that is to engage one another rather than to take take a step back to actually know your neighbor, to actually love your neighbor, is as radically different as you may see the world. I think it's really important. And that sounds like just jazz, just talk.
No.
But I mean, I think it's really important. What the philosophy of Jesus, I think that love philosophy, people hear the word love and they misdefine it. Love takes you a lot of places. On the way over here, I was driving down a couple streets away from your neighborhood, and there was a kid running towards a busy street. He was running, and there was a dad playing with other kids, and that dad, who looked like he was pretty focused from his dress and stuff about just being cool, lost his cool immediately. He sprinted to grab his son that was running towards that road, his 2 or 3 year old son. You know, love compels you to do things that you might otherwise not do. And love takes you into areas of truth that are pretty uncomfortable. And so I don't know. I think living Jesus' kind of mantra of the way love is intended to be oriented in the world will not necessarily be what the modern church or modern Christians or what modern society thinks love ought to look like, but I think it is a solution.
Yeah. And, you know, everything you just said, by the way, is encapsulated in a very secular idea of the media being for profit and not delivering truth. So like you're saying, love takes you into areas of truth that may be uncomfortable, but the media exists. And the point I would make to you is if everybody were to turn the news off and get off of social media,
we'd be way better off.
We would love in a way we've never known before, because we make so many strong assumptions based on things we're told.
Well, especially getting your news through social media.
Right.
So a lot,
which is a terrible idea.
A lot of people, you know, and I'm not going to play that like fake news joke right now, but a lot of people, before all that argument was happening, a lot of people have begun to get their news through social channels, which is natural for us as human creatures. We want to know what our friends know.
Hey, listen, when I did News Talk Radio,
right,
the advent of social media was wonderful, because all you were doing was grabbing everything you need from some different channel.
That's right. So, but what the news that gets fed to you is through algorithms. If you know anything about analytics or whatever, the news that comes into your, so literally the news story that you may see is based upon what that social media algorithm thinks you want to see. So talk about becoming like a groupthink person. I mean, you're going to become so insular so fast when you allow something like your social media, your Facebook, your Twitter feed or whatever, to give you the information that they think you want. It's going to be a long time. Like when things were popping off with some of the different shootings and different things that have happened in this country, you know, I had some African-American friends. They'd be fine with me saying my black friends, but I don't know how PC people that are listening to this might want me to be. So I don't think very, but here we go. So some of my African-American brothers, you know, that I'm very tight with, you know, they are like, hey, why aren't you saying something about this? I honestly didn't know, because it popped off in their social media feed right away. And and I didn't know until they said something to me, because the Facebook didn't think, and not that I get my news other ways, but I'm just saying on a busy day, if that's where you're primarily going to get it, you're going to be slow to get the information that you want to get.
You went down there. I remember watching you on Facebook Live.
In Charlotte, that was
downtown Charlotte during kind of the heat of people rioting and protesting.
In Charlotte, I wasn't late to know something about it, because it's the city that I live in. You know, like no. And I didn't do anything incredible or whatever. Cool story about that though. So I'm driving because
what was the incident, by the way, that led to
So there's a shooting that took place in an apartment complex in not too far from Center City, Charlotte, that a police officer shot a man that was sitting in a vehicle. After he got out of the vehicle, the police officer and group of police officers thought that he was making an aggressive move towards them, thought that he had a firearm and was raising a firearm. So they shot the man. He died. That's a whole different, you know, a whole different ball of wax.
That was the catalyst. But
that's the catalyst. Right. So there were a group of young men that were from that neighborhood that began to protest immediately. And because of live, like Periscope and these kind of things, you could see it unfold right then and there. And other people could, and so people rallied to that cry.
Nothing draws a crowd like a crowd.
Right. So it happened really quickly. And so anyway, so funny story, that was the catalyst. That was the catalyst. So this went on for different hot points for a couple of days in Charlotte. But I was, because it's a city that I love and city that I care about, and I felt like there's a need to not just talk about faith, but to walk out faith. And so if something's happening in my city, I can't do a lot, but I can pray with people. I can be a peacemaker in a difficult situation and take people that are, be a third party, an objective party that kind of helps somebody that's a friend see somebody else as a friend, if you want to say it that way. So I spent some time around uptown, mostly praying, but also engaging those that were hurting and trying to process and praying with people, that kind of thing. So I'm driving through an area of Charlotte pretty late at night, just trying to figure out where because the protesters were moving to different places. So I'm on my way to where the protesters have moved to, and kind of in a weird spot that I'm sure the police officers that are now getting very weary, like, what's this guy doing here, going towards a problem when the average person should be going away from it.
Sure.
And I would have those same questions if I were them. So I don't know what they're about to think. I don't know how you feel, but when a police officer approaches me, I still have that, that feeling of, I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
Like I'm some of my best friends are police officers. I respect what you guys do, but most of my engagements have been, hey, I'm speeding and I need a ticket written or whatever.
It's similar to, I made the point a couple of episodes ago about HR wanting to be cool. Anytime you have a job and the HR people come around, hey man, we can hang out. No. You're the principal of work. Police are the principal of real life.
Right.
When you interact with them, you're kind of going, I like you.
That's it.
I want to get out of this without getting in trouble as quick as possible, even if you're not doing anything wrong. I understand that.
So I pull up to a light and whatever you want to call it, the police version of a golf cart, but it's ramped up. What do you call those things, like a gator or whatever? You know? So there's several people in this, and they're all geared up. They're ready to go. And they've got their guns and they've got their, riot gear and et cetera. So they pull up beside me and they motion to me to roll down my window. I'm like,
oh, brother,
what did I do? What did I do? Here we go. I'm like, oh, what's going on? And the police officer that motioned for me to roll down my window asked me do you have any Grey Poupon? This is what, and I guess he's just trying to lighten things up.
Yeah.
But that honestly, that was the experience that I had with people in our city. On all sides of this issue. For the most part, if you really tried hard, you could get where they were coming from. Mm-hmm. My big grievance was primarily with people outside of our city.
Sure.
I mean, not that there weren't problems happening from people within. Mm-hmm. There were. I mean, I'm not trying to...
Well, and though, Brian, in every instance, we have found that the troublemakers are 90% of the time people coming from outside of the cities who are just venting about anything else and causing trouble.
And I can tell you from that perspective that a lot of what was happening in the media, especially the national media, was just inflammatory.
Yeah.
It was intended. It is designed to get views.
Yeah.
And that at whatever cost.
It's all clickbait.
To sell ad space, to make ad revenue at the expense of real people's lives, in my opinion. Yeah. And so that to me is disgusting. And I know that because some of the things that were reported, I was watching live, and it just wasn't the case. It wasn't the way, and it would go both ways. Yeah. That's not what actually happened, and the strategy behind it was so transparent that it goes beyond, oh, we just didn't get the right information. Things were happening so quickly. Yeah. I mean,
look, don't make the mistake of believing the media cares about you.
That's right.
Right?
They're not your friends.
They don't care.
No.
The 7 on your side, the garbage like that, where we went out and we found out if this lady really needed an oil change, and they don't care if it's not going to generate eyeballs on the TV
Right.
or clicks on the website. They do not care.
Right. If
They
you're a
don't
feel-good
care.
piece, then leverage that. That's
Yeah.
awesome. But it's a feel-good piece because they think somebody
Yeah.
wants to watch that.
Because it's going to make enough people feel good
Right.
that somebody will pay to put
Right.
their advertising in that space. All right, so let's move into one more question. Then you brought a pretty cool gun I want to see, and you give me the rundown on that. But I often wonder from a preacher's perspective, okay, how do you address the issue of lethal force as self-defense?
Yeah, I mean, it goes to the love thing, right? Love takes you to places that you wouldn't normally go. So for me, there are a couple passages of scripture that jump to my mind right away. For example, scripture says that I'm worse than an infidel if I don't provide for my family. I'm paraphrasing. That word provision is far bigger than food on their table and roof over their head. That provision is every kind of protection that I as a father can provide for them. That word entails every kind of instruction, every kind of wisdom that I can share with them. It goes far beyond just, here's your food, here's your safe, clean bed to sleep in.
Right.
Every kind of provision that I can give is my responsibility as a father. And I'm called, it's strong language, I'm called worse than an infidel if I don't do that. Whatever's in my power, whatever the sovereign God of the universe has provided me to provide for them. So that's strong language. So for me, I love my kids. You better believe I'll cap you if you mess with them.
Right.
like you better believe it. But that love goes beyond just my personal responsibility, I think. I think there are all kinds of aspects of it. That we live in a world where I think you can't debate that we live in a world that's filled with evil.
Yeah.
And if evil exists and is growing at such an exponential rate, for us to say, I'm going to do nothing about that, is in fact evil itself. If a man knows to do good and doesn't do it, it's evil. I think these are strong arguments. But then somebody says, well, what about you? Somebody just wants to kill you. Well, my life is a gift from God, and every ounce of it I'm supposed to value. The scripture Christians talk about this idea of the imago Dei. My life isn't my own. It has been given to the Lord. And that word isn't like Christianese talk. My master. And so it's his life to do with it as he wants. If he wants me to lose it, fine. But you're going to have to convince me that he sent that guy to cap me, because I'm going to love my life because it's a gift from God. And I have a responsibility to use my life to take care of those kids and to spend it. So anyway, I think that we have a responsibility to preserve our life, to fight evil, to love those that have been entrusted to us and that cannot protect themselves. And so to me, like, I don't think people act like from a Christian perspective that the onus is on me to prove that taking life in protection of one's family is a legitimate perspective. I actually think the opposite is true. I think you have to prove to me that taking life in the protection of one's family is evil. I think you have to show me how you get that out of Jesus' teachings. I just don't know how you do.
That's excellent. That's an excellent answer. Yeah, I wouldn't know either. That's a great way to turn it on its head. Let's move into the theoretical world here where your faith has been deemed illegal. Okay?
Yeah.
So now you have a government, and I'm not saying this is true. Again, theoretical. Let's say you live in a world where Christianity has been deemed illegal, and they're shutting down church, and they're murdering Christians.
Yeah, I don't think that's hard to imagine.
Yeah, it's not too far. What's the Christian response from a tactical standpoint, if you will?
Come and get it.
Yeah.
Honestly, we live in a situation where we're very fortunate as Americans, I think. And I love this country. And I think that our responsibility is to be images of Jesus, little Christ, and the world. And that absolutely means that we're going to make sacrifices, and people are going to do things that we're going to grin and bear. We're going to take that, like, the average person wouldn't. I think following Jesus is going to take you into some really uncomfortable places. But the net at the end of that is net to the side of good, not net to the side of evil. So, loving your enemy doesn't translate into allowing that enemy to murder your kids. That's not the same thing. I don't think that's what Jesus was teaching. And again, I think somebody would have to prove otherwise. So in our situation, when the government is structured, I think we're the greatest human experiment in government for a long time, and that is
Brian.
I think so because I'm an American, but
that's right. You're right. Then you're right.
We don't know how far. I can't go back into history, and I don't pretend to know every aspect of history. But from my experience, it's amazing. But that experiment is that we, the people, are in charge. And that's upside down right now, I think, in practice.
Yeah.
But, we have certain inalienable rights that are there. And one of those is freedom of religion. And I think that if you take that out of this country, it ceases to be what it currently is or what it was intended to be. So I think that we have a responsibility to continue to practice our faith in the middle of whatever you want to call it. I hesitate to use the typical words that are used, but the church has flourished in situations where it has been under extreme pressure.
Yeah.
That's when it grows the most. Look at the church in China right now. Look at the foundation of our faith in Rome, in the Greco-Roman world. They were being tortured for their faith. And I think that we may in our lifetime see that. If we don't, awesome. I'm not first in line to, hey, torture me for my faith, but I don't think our responsibilities change to be committed to truth because of love in that scenario. I think a lot of modern Christians will abandon it, though.
Yeah. Under the pressure, you mean?
I honestly, what does it cost you to be a Christian?
Yeah.
And
right now, nothing.
In modern America, what does it cost you to be a Christian or to say, I'm a Jesus follower? I think to actually follow Jesus right now, it would cost you a lot. But for most Americans, it doesn't cost them very much.
Yeah.
Because I think his philosophy of life will take you into really uncomfortable and difficult places in our current world. And, it's very easy for us to kind of fall back on our heels and be, very passive and, defensive in mindset, and to think, I can be a comfortable Christian and that's fine. But, being a disciple of Christ is far, far different than that. I thought we were going to talk about guns and stuff, but, so I'm a little ill prepared for this conversation, but I love talking about it. So that's fine.
Yeah. We're about to talk about a gun. You'll get that out of your system too.
No, I just, when it comes to, I think where's our baseline here? Taking life, or I think it's all about preserving life, right? And the real question is, what's the value of a human life?
Yeah.
And that's huge.
Yeah.
And in a country where that's not respected, the value of human life is not respected, and it has not been respected for some time. That's we're going to see a philosophy of evil growing.
Yeah.
When you can slaughter babies all over the country, you can. You're going to have a problem convincing the average person that's been desensitized by that human life is as valuable as it is. But it's a gift from God, not from Washington.
Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway.
Well, George Washington said that, among the pillars, I'm paraphrasing here, among the pillars of a free society, morality was key. Yeah. And without morality and religion, it wouldn't survive. And the more we get away from it. And furthermore, your perspective to me is important, because a lot of what you run into when you have conversations with people about defending yourself, guns especially, things like that, they always tend to go, well, aren't you supposed to just love people? Aren't you supposed to, like, this idea of training to kill someone is terrible, and you're shooting at black silhouettes, so you're a racist. All these arguments you get from people. You have a very succinct way there of phrasing it, in the sense of you have an obligation to defend your family.
Well, the answer to their question is, don't you have an obligation to love people? Yes. Mm-hmm. The definition of love in our country is broken. And I think Jesus defined love. God is love. And you have to have a well-formed idea of theology and who God is to have a well-formed idea of what love is. I mean, I really think that was foundational to this country. That's why I said at the beginning, when you asked me the questions, I think the book of John, because God, that's a big idea. What would God look like in human shoes? You know, what would that be like? Well, look at the way Jesus evidenced love. I mean, it's really uncomfortable. Jesus was pretty radical in a lot of places. He was super compassionate. He looked on the multitudes with eyes of compassion. He also chased the money changers out of the temple brutally. And that's the same guy. And that wasn't, well, he was this way. He woke up on the wrong side of the bed this day. No, right. I mean, he's the same guy. Both of those were because of love for people that were being taken advantage of. He was the friend of sinners. And he was the guy that would hang out with the prostitutes, and he didn't care what you said about him, because he was here to make a difference in those people's lives and to show them a kind of love that would transcend what they thought. Anyway, we could go. Forgive asking a pastor about.
No.
Absolutely it's not. Just like I'm so sick and tired of seeing the way Jesus is being presented by the church. Yeah. I think until we become unapologetic about who he really was, then we'll be able to see some reformation that I think is desperately needed in the American church. I mean, right now the American church is just a marketing thing, I don't blame the least likely person to be in an American church right now, an evangelical American church that you could actually hear the gospel in, is an 18 to 32-year-old single American man, any ethnicity. I don't blame those guys for saying, I don't need this. Yeah. This is a waste of my time. Because listen to what you hear. And I love the church. I'm not anti the church, but we need to get back to talking about what Jesus taught and living that out. It was intended to be a gathering point for people to go out on mission and do Jesus' life in the world, which means getting into those dark places in your city, those places where human trafficking is taking place. Good night. Cities like this, I don't know about Greenville, but Charlotte is a hub for the pornography industry. Well, Christian guys need to stop being in their mom's basement, jacking off with, Cheetos printed fingertips. I am guilty of all of these things, but you are giving money. You're giving money to an industry that is provable. They're abusing women and taking women's lives like they're chattel all over we've got to take our faith seriously. And until pulpits become rallying places for those people to go out on mission and show truth in love, I think we're just going to have this continuing to follow what's happened in Europe and other places where the church is just an afterthought,
broken down, and nobody takes it seriously anymore.
It's nothing. Point. Yeah, it's nothing.
Well, you mentioned the inalienable rights of Americans, and I thought at that time, as you said that, I thought, well, none of our neighbors have it anymore. There's no freedom of speech or freedom of religion in Canada, because if you say bad things about Islam in Canada, they will lock you up, they will sue you, and if you're uncultured, they don't even let you into the country because of the things you say. And so if you combine that with a breakdown of the church, then you do end up in this terrifying scenario. But listen, let me tell you, I don't want you to feel bad about going on about it, because I think one of the things we lack, regardless of the industry or spirituality, whatever, the thing we lack most in our world right now is people that will speak honesty with compassion and conviction that isn't rehearsed. Yeah. And that's what's great about just listening to you talk, is the fact that anytime you ask people questions now, or especially you watch TV interviews and all that, it's all pre-rehearsed.
I didn't know these questions, so it's good to have.
It's all but that's the other side. So if you were to ask any sort of what are those guys called? Consultant. If you said to a consultant, well, what's the proper way to build a podcast? They go, identify your audience and then stick to the topics they want to hear.
Right.
And then maybe there's a way you do that, but also there's a point where you have to say, well, you're open to any conversation you can have with anybody.
Okay.
And it's important to me that you don't sit down and go, this is exactly what the guidelines are. My point is bigger than that, but I'm breaking down on our level.
Yeah.
Everything you ingest from the media, from Hollywood, is scripted and rehearsed.
Yeah.
And when a guest is on CNN with Don Lemon, the guest has most likely gotten the questions ahead of time. They know the topic. You'll see people, you go to YouTube and look at videos and you'll see, oh, this isn't what you said we were going to talk about, so I'm not doing the interview. That kind of stuff, that's bogus. It doesn't do us any favors if we can't sit down and have a conversation about something that might either make us uncomfortable, make us think about things we haven't thought about before. Like you said, one of the charities we talk about a lot at the beginning of the shows is Operation Underground Railroad. I got involved with that when we first started having kids, and I learned about 4 years ago, as the organization was starting, I learned of them. That here's a guy whose job was to go find kids. They were videotaping people raping these children, and this was this guy's job to go get them. And he will tell you, if you're watching pornography as a habit, you're supporting those people.
That's right.
You were supporting those people, whether you want to admit it or not. So this sexualization of our culture, where it's become normalized, where it's completely normal for girls to go out in clothes that leave nothing to the imagination. It's normal for guys to philander and be as loose as they want to be. I'm not saying that you have to be the biggest prude and wet blanket at every party, but the point I'm making is...
In fact, the opposite is the case, I think. And I think it's a problem that we are perceived. You think that anyway, we'll get into that in a second.
The people, the big point I'm trying to make here is that we are lacking people with strong conviction, with a moral code. George Washington had how many rules? I mean, that's what he wrote out. You don't have those guys anymore that are willing to be those people.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. There seems to be, I don't know if we've bought into this whole hypocrisy tactic that people have used, that if you're going to have a strong opinion about something and it's not just your opinion, you're going to go beyond, no, this isn't my opinion, this is truth, objective truth.
Yeah.
If you're going to have that, people are going to expect you, if you're going to speak up about it, they're going to try to shout you down by saying, well, do you 100% of the time always live up to that objective truth?
Right.
Or are you a hypocrite?
Right.
Well, the reality of the human experience is that no.
Right. Of course not.
No, you're not living up to that. You are, in fact, fallible. And because we've gotten our eye off the ball, the cornerstone of the Christian faith is not Chris or Brian, it's Jesus. So the question isn't, am I living up to this moral code 100% of the time, or are there holes in my mortar? Because there are, and I think that's are there problems with Jesus's life? And you show me those, and I'll abandon this.
Yeah,
you show me those. But the point is, the flip side of that is, I'm so sick of the pretense that takes place in the church as a result of kind of cowing to that. There are so many. You have two sides of the thing. The pastor that's trying to be cool, and he thinks that, hey, you need to just know that I'm a regular guy. You just need to know, like I'm down, sin, whatever, no big deal. You've got that, and then you've got, which some people think that I'm doing in this conversation, which is not what's happening. The other side is the guy that's pretending to be something that he's just not. I've been behind closed doors with all those people, and I'm so sick of the pretense. And both of those things, I think, come from the eye off the ball of who's the focal point of the Christian faith, and that's Jesus. So I don't think you have to pretend. I think you get a whole lot more traction when you say, this is true, and I'm seeking to adhere to it. I haven't mastered it. I'm in the process of development, and he will conform me into his image eventually. I think that is far better. So I think people need to just be really honest about how fallible they are.
Yeah.
And start promoting Jesus again.
I'll tell you, even if you take this, even if you wanted to argue against any sort of religion or spirituality.
Yeah, let's do that.
Well, no.
I'm just kidding.
I'm saying if you're hearing this conversation, you go, well, religion's not for me, whatever. I will tell you this. I admire Travis Haley a lot. It's no secret if you're looking around the room that we're in right now.
Yeah.
But most of what I admired about him was kind of on the recommendation of some people I very much trusted.
Yeah.
We drove out to Tulsa and took a Haley class, right? And day one, first thing out of his mouth was, leave your ego at the door, okay? If you guys came here to show off, you can't be here.
Yeah.
You got to walk into this situation humble and ready to learn. And what I'm going to tell you is I don't know everything.
That's right.
But I have failed so many times that I can tell you how to not fail.
Yeah, he can expedite the process for you,
Right.
Like,
and his whole thing was learn from my mistakes. Sit here and let me tell you the things that I've done that this didn't work, but this did.
Right.
And it was so refreshing to like meet this guy who is a legitimate hero. Like he's a living, actual, breathing hero. He is somebody I will never be when it comes to that kind of stuff, okay? But even then, he was so much
he's
like...
getting pretty excited right now, guys.
I know, right? But he was...
The man crush is thick, brother.
I got to shed a couple tears. I'll be back. But the fact that he was such a disciple of humility
Yeah.
and leaving your ego at the door
Yeah.
in an industry that is flooded with that.
It's antithetical.
Well, I was just like, who is this guy? Who is this guy? Who is this guy? Because even at the time, and this has been 2 years ago almost, even at the time, I was kind of familiar with who he was, obviously enough to pay and drive out and take the class. But being there for the few days we were, it was just kind of like okay, so there is a section of this industry, and he's not the only one, I'm not trying to say this, but there is a section of the firearms industry where they're not all jerks, like where people are cool and they'll hang out and they'll let you ask questions that you think are stupid questions, and then they'll help you walk through that. So the point is, like you said, when you add in the idea of a moral code and a God who says you kind of that here's a rule, I don't want to say list rules, but here's a moral code to live by, and if you do, A, the world will be a better place. B, you'll be happier and more at peace with yourself. Even if you wanted to say, well, I don't want to believe all that, there's so much success behind just being a humble, eager to learn person, and the world could be better regardless of the way you want to approach it.
Yeah.
Half of our problem is we all think we have the answer.
Yeah.
And we refuse to listen to anybody else's opinion on matters.
Right. So if you make Christianity a moral code, you don't get it. And I'm not saying that you are saying that, but you're right that if our world has to function under a moral code, you can't find a better one.
Right.
So like Christianity is far more than a religion. It is an opportunity to experience relationship with God through Jesus, the God who came to you. It's an amazing thing. But even if you don't buy into all that, look at the Hebrew law in the Old Testament, and then see how it has come to fulfillment in Christ's teachings, and see how he truncates that for modern life. And you compare that to other religions of the world, and you will find it stands alone. From just a philosophical standpoint, it stands alone. And so if you're just trying to deal with mankind and you're not interested in spiritual stuff, fine. But I would challenge you to at least evaluate the teachings of Jesus on a real life basis.
I like it. All right, I've kept you a long time.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I'm talking. So
No, I like it. I want you to grab that rifle, and I want you to tell me
so
everything. Whoops, I'm going to get.
Now, I don't know the
here.
talking points for this because I don't really look at those until later on in the whole process. But so this is a gun that was sent out to me from the FIME group, and it is a rifle from the Molot factory in Russia, which is kind of cool because some of those initial emails were like broken English and stuff, and I kind of dug that. In my own personal story, Russia was one of the first countries that I traveled to outside of the U.S. that was at that point a bit third world. So some of my formative experiences were in that country. It's a beautiful place. So this gun is a 308. It was just released, and it's a AK variant with a longer barrel, and it is chambered in the very American 308 with a folding stock, and it has got a cheek adjustable cheek rest here, cheek riser. Has the ability to they're actually making a specific scope mount for this, but most of your Scope mounts will ride on that if you're an AK person. And I think the idea behind this is to like look at the DMR and the hunting market. So your designated marksman kind of roles. Your guys that might be looking at an M14 or an AR-10, I think they're kind of targeting that group. And I've just put a handful of rounds through it so far, so I don't have a strong opinion yet. But so far, it's running very reliably, and I've only had it out to 100 yards with iron sights. But it appears to be pretty accurate. I don't remember what the book said, but I think their manual said something like a 1.5 inch group is what you should expect.
Yeah,
which is pretty good for an AK.
Yeah, well,
pretty good for an AK.
Yeah,
so,
combined with the fact that you're putting a 308 on it. Is there, again, not a gun expert here, are there other guns like this? Are there AK variants on the market that are
so I think
calibered in 308?
Not many, but as a Vepr type, and I'm not an AK guy. I'm just full transparency. I'm learning as I go with this, but I believe that there have been a couple of 308 variants in the past. This is a brand new offering from this particular factory. This gun in 308, I think, has been offered as a sporter, but not in this configuration. So with a different trigger group, wooden stock with the thumb grip. I think it was more hunting styled, but I think that they did from this factory once before.
Is that a 18 or 20 inch barrel? 20 inch barrel. Yeah. Okay. Any idea on a release to the public? Is it on the shelves now?
So it was supposed to release the 29th, and then they pushed it back because of the backup with the optic mount that was going to be available for this to April 6th. But then the press release came out like yesterday.
Yeah.
So apparently something got mixed up there. So
if you look around hard enough right now, you might be able to find one.
They're going to be shipping. They're going to be shipping soon. Now this particular one has a different coating because it was a pre-release rifle. So this is more painted on. The one that's coming out, I think, will have a little different coating on it. So.
All right. So what's it called? If I go into the gun store, what am I asking for?
Yeah, I think you're asking for the Molot 308 Vepr.
Okay. Any idea what MSRP is going to be on it?
1100-ish, I think.
Ooh, all right. That's a tough market, man. You talk about trying to crack a code. You're getting into the AR-10 style rifles these days. That's not super easy.
No, it's not. But I think there's. I mean, you mentioned Travis Haley. Haley, and maybe you're familiar with
Peace be upon him.
Jim Fuller.
Heck yeah.
So
Rifle Dynamics.
I don't know if you've seen some of the videos that he put out. They're playing around with a DMR.
Oh yeah.
An AK variant DMR setup.
Huh.
And so you know that if Rifle Dynamics is behind it, there's interest in people running the AK. They want to have something that's more realistic to stretch out for longer ranges.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to see some people coming to market with offerings. And this is a good factory. So we'll see what this one does. Right now, your magazines in 308 are going to be kind of your, it's like anything that's.
Is it a proprietary mag, or is that
no,
my Magpul AR-10 mag gonna work? No,
it's
an AK mag in 308.
AK mag in 308. So because there have been other variants, I think you'll be able to use those, but none of those, because they've been sporter configurations, none of those are bigger than 10 rounds. So you're going to be like right now. I don't know of there was one group that was making a 20 round, like a training group for the old sporters. They were making a 20 round, kind of their own magazine. I don't know that they're still doing that. So I don't know that there are 20 round mags available, but it's something new to market. It's just like anything else, kind of being an early adopter. We'll see.
All right. The Molot.
Molot.
The what?
Molot. Yeah.
Molot.
You said it right.
Yeah. I feel every time I say it,
I'm probably not saying it right.
I feel like I get it wrong.
That's like the one Russian thing. Praise the Lord in Russian. That's what I remember.
The Molot 308 Vepr. I like it. And if you go to our Instagram page for the Felt Recoil Shell, you'll see you kind of brought a bevy of firearms over there. We took a picture of your little collection, but this is mostly stuff you're going to be writing about in the future.
So the AR is mine, and then the Rock Island 9mm.
Tell me a little bit more about that, because that's really intriguing.
And 22 TCM. So 22 is their own proprietary round. I don't know that anybody else has picked it up yet other than Arms Corps, because, Rock Island has their own ammo manufacturer. So that's got that pretty hot pretty hot round.
Yeah.
You know, it's loud and it's fast, but there's very little recoil. So it's kind of a cool, thing, especially if you think of like people that they were getting those 22 mags was the Kel-Tec gun that people were really interested in. They kind of saw it as a
PMR, right?
the PMR. They kind of, I really want an FN57, but I don't want to spend that money. So I think there's an interest in the market for a 22 type round that goes really fast. But this is actually, people look at it and they think it's a neck down 9mm with 22. It's not a 9mm round. I think it's actually a 223 round that's neck down. It's cut and neck down.
So it's called, what is it chambered in? What's
TCM,
the
22 TCM?
22 TCM.
Yeah,
okay.
and then but from my perspective, even if that round doesn't take off, it's a pretty inexpensive 9mm 1911 to begin with. So you kind of get two guns for one. I don't remember what the MSRP for, but I think you can buy them in the $500 to $600 range.
Yeah, usually Rock Islands, you can pretty much guess about $600.
Yeah. So, you know, and it is VZ grips. It shoots really well. You know, I'm really surprised. I haven't had a lot of experience with Rock Islands. I'm really surprised at how fun that gun is to shoot. And then there's a Canic that they send out from TriStar. It's imported by TriStar, and it's a 9mm there as well. Pretty familiar platform. You guys will recognize
it. Looks
that.
really familiar.
Yeah,
but it's definitely not a CZ.
No, it's
but
not.
I can't put my finger on it.
But it's a really good gun at a really inexpensive value from what I can tell so far.
Do you already have your write-ups on those ready for the Arms Guide? Are those available, or are those coming in the near future?
Neither one of those have been published yet, but they'll come. And I probably will put them in at the Arms Guide. I may also write stuff at other locations for them.
Okay. Yeah. So where can people find you on the socials?
Yeah. So I have
Rev to the limit.
Yeah, I haven't done a lot of the social side of things because most of my social stuff is me, Brian Norris.
Sure.
So you can just go do that. But I do have a Twitter thing that goes up from Rev to the limit pretty much when I post a YouTube video.
Yeah, man, you got retweeted by Brownells recently.
Yeah, that was
a big deal.
I'm actually, Brownells has been really good to me. A few months ago, they sent me some ammo and said, they didn't ask for anything. They just said, hey, could you say thank you to us in your article? I'm like, that's the kind of advertisement you're looking for?
Yeah, right.
Thank you for that. You know, that's because ammo is really difficult to come by when you're trying to actually give you guys the like
you can't really do it on 50 rounds.
No, right. A lot of times I'll shoot 1,000 rounds on a gun and that's expensive, right?
Yeah, it is,
you know, and it's good for my training, but it's not the gun that I'm probably going to carry, and so it doesn't translate directly. You know, so it's really handy to do that. Brownells, I love those guys right now. There's a guy named Roy that is big in the marketing department for Brownells, and man, Roy is the man.
I'll tell you this, Brownells, what I love about them, if you know their history a little bit, they kind of started as an educational resource for the firearms community. Yeah. So their existence is solely based upon the idea of spreading the knowledge, and I love anybody willing to do that.
If you go back to our political conversation, or whatever you want to call it, I mean, they are an example of somebody that doesn't talk down to you as an individual, and that empowers the person. It doesn't say, hey, we know something that you don't know.
Right.
Their whole deal was, you want to fix your gun, you don't think you need a gunsmith for something,
right?
Watch this video, buy that part. You're empowered to do so, which I'd love to see our current government get that mindset a little bit more.
Boy, wouldn't that be awesome? All right, Brian Norris, a writer for the Arms Guide, contributor to many other places as well, Ammo Land and Soft Rep. Find him on all the socials, and then on YouTube, subscribe to the Rev. It's the number 2. Did I write that down right?
Yeah, man, I'm really embarrassed with that name, but yeah, it's Rev to the limit.
Rev to the limit, DA limit. All right, appreciate you hanging out.
Name too.
Yeah, so you want to lay something down?
Yeah,
go ahead.
Man, I can put
Murder the flow for us.
Put a couple bars down.
I'll have a beat.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, there's a
good man.
There's a Facebook site, Reformed Bars. And I thought these are guys that are reformed in theology that are drinking. Like that's what I thought it was. Somebody shared it with me. It's reformed theology guys that are rapping. And I'm sorry, but a bunch of white pastors rapping is funny. It's funny.
It's all about minivans and
like Calvinism and this kind
games.
of stuff. Like I don't know who has time for that stuff.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah, no.
If you ain't chosen, you ain't going.
It's not for me.
I hear you. All right, you're gonna be at NRA, right?
Yeah, I'll see you there.
All right, we'll see you down at the NRA show. Appreciate you hanging out.
Yeah.
Set my camera down. More information, feltrecoilshow.com. We'll see you next time.